Welcome, Church. To prepare. As predicted, this class is now turned into a Tibetan class.
So now, with regard to the reading today, so what I'm thinking to do is, rather than go on with the many reasonings at this point, is to switch and switch. Do the topic of the two truths, and then we'll come back to doing the various reasonings. Because it's good to not just have the reasoning of coming and going, but to see how the others might work. And that's why I think going on and doing Newland's book will be so helpful, because it gives a focal topic, the two truths, on which the various Euro-American and Japanese scholars will have very different takes. A really mature essay on the two truths, say, would indicate the sources for why Huntington, Murty, and so forth think the way they do. The contrast is so extreme. And these Gelugbo authors have all these sources that they bring out that sometimes at first blush you think, oh my God, these guys, they've just got their heads wedged. They're entirely wrong. They don't know anything that's going on. And really mature writing would be able to zero in on just the line in Chandrakirti or Nagarjuna or wherever that is the source for their thinking this way. The line in them. That it would be hard to say they're misinterpreting it. For you to say they're misinterpreting it. You can say, and you would then wonder, how does Jayasheva or whoever it is, Tsongkhapa and so forth, how would they deal with this? You know? Not just this is how they deal with it, how would they deal with it? But that's really mature. And, it's something to strive for. It's a bit much. To present the contrast starkly. And sometimes people feel, well, I'm being unfair to poor old Kanza to just drop in and, he's doing something else, or, well, it would be unfair if you were calling him an idiot because he said such and such. Do you follow? It's not unfair to draw a stark contrast. That's not unfair. And see, there's a clarity of thought that comes with drawing a clear contrast. Some of the contrasts will be as great as within this Gelugbo literature, it is obvious that there's a spiritual intent, there's a path, there's a goal, and that with some of these scholars, that is totally lacking. They do not see Prasangika, Chandrakirti, and so forth, Nagarjuna as even concerned this way. You have to be open to huge contrasts, you see? Huge contrasts. We all work with certain voices, and I work with one voice in person, another voice in a good deal of what I've written. And the voice leads you to say certain things. Your literary voice shapes the material, shapes what you can say, can and can't say. And it's interesting to look at the voice that people use that just prevents them from saying certain things, prevents me from saying certain things. That in person I'm quite willing to say. So today we're looking at illumination, correct? Tsongkhapa says here about Swatantrika, and we're talking about the object of negation in the various Madhyamaka schools, right? What is being refuted? He says in his essence, the essence of eloquence, or the essence of the good explanations, that it appears that other Indian scholars did not notice that Chandrakirti felt that he had a different object of negation than Bhava Viveka, Shantarakshita, and so forth. That means in India it was missed that there would be a different object of negation in the view of emptiness between Chandrakirti and Bhava Viveka, etc. Which is so fundamental in Gelugpa. So Tsongkhapa is saying that he has seen that Chandrakirti saw that, which then he has to go on to show that Chandrakirti himself saw it. You know, or was it just techniques that Chandrakirti was concerned about with the realization of the same emptiness? Or did Chandrakirti perceive himself as having a different view of emptiness, this being Nagarjuna's actual view? Tsongkhapa comes down on Chandrakirti's side, but you see Chandrakirti then had to be somewhat unclear about the topic if Indians did not notice this. And Tsongkhapa then has to go in and has taken it upon himself to show it. And again, as I said before, it is genius, I suppose, that sees this and formulates it and finds it in certain passages and twists it out of certain passages. When it is presented that, oh, this is the way it was in India, and it's super clear, it deprecates his genius, his contribution. And it also, by taking this tack of saying, oh, it's just there in Indian Buddhism, gets you pissed off when you see, you know, if you swallow that line at all, and then when you see that, well, it just isn't, it isn't there. And of course, within Tibetan culture also, the scholars enjoy these difficulties too. They have their own way of enjoying it. So they put forth a pretension that it's all there in India, and then on the other hand, they enjoy it thoroughly. So have your cake and eat it too. So what becomes, you know, it's shocking that what Tsongkhapa's first line here, after the first heading, other reliable source books of the Swatantrika school do not have a clear identification of the object of negation. My God! Number one, you would think every single one of them would, but never mind that only one of them does. And it is not Bhava Viveka, the founder of the Swatantrika school, and so-called founder of the Swatantrika school in general, or of Shantarakshita, the founder of the specific sub-school, the Yogacara Swatantrika Madhyamaka. So what's shocking is that we only have Kamalashila's illumination of the middle. And within that, we have only this passage, which contains a quote from the Lankavatara Sutra. Only this passage. But the existence that is opposite of the mode of conventional existence, and then another shock is that instead of identifying the object of negation, the Gakcha itself, right? What Kamalashila is doing is identifying what conventional existence is, and then Tsongkhapa is drawing the conclusion of what the object of negation must be from what the explanation of conventional existence is. What were they doing in India? It's like identifying the object of negation is the first step in meditation on emptiness in Gelug. So how is it that this never appears in the literature of the Swatantrika school? I mean, they still assert emptiness, right? Emptiness was big in India. It didn't just become big in Tibet. So object of negation obviously became big in Tibet and wasn't big in India. Within the Swatantrika school, in regard, I mean, if you're talking about emptiness, empty of what, right? Unless emptiness means non-existence, in which case it's just obvious what the object of negation is. Everything that exists. Which is what many people think emptiness means. So you see, this is the mature view. You see, when people write, emptiness is nihilistic. Emptiness means the total denial of life. That you see, the mature essay on this points to the fact that in all of Swatantrika writings, there is no clear delineation of any object of negation in the view of emptiness, except one passage that indirectly does so because it sets forth what the measure of existing conventionally is. You see, you have found a source in the texts themselves. The mistaken awareness, this is what he says. The mistaken awareness, blah, 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 is called the concealer. Are you with me? The mistaken awareness is called the concealer. The mistrue lode is called the concealer. Gunzo. Well, gee, you wouldn't have thought samvrti, gunzo, meant concealer anyway, right? Except that we've talked about it in this class that way. You would have thought, is the conventional, God, is the convention. You'd be quite lost. Concealer makes more sense, that a mistaken awareness would be called a concealer, right? Now, what kind of mistaken awareness is? That superimposes an aspect opposite to the absence of ultimate entityness, the absence of an ultimate nature. So that superimposes an ultimate entityness, right? An ultimate existence, an ultimate thingness.
Why it's an aspect? Because, I mean, I'm trying to, so is it an aspect of ultimate emptiness?
No, it just means the opposite. It's just the way, aspect is a word overused in India. It's hard to come into another language with the almost non-meaning that it than it often has. It's not one aspect as opposed to another. And superimpose this on things which in reality or ultimately are without their own entities. Okay. So that's ignorance. Because, now why is it called gunzo? Why is it called samvrti? Because it obstructs from suchness, or because it veils from perception of suchness. And it seems the only way people have been able to make sense out of this is because it obstructs itself from perception of suchness, or because it veils other awarenesses from perception of suchness. My own ignorance with regard to reality, suchness, emptiness. That ignorance itself can't perceive reality, right? Because it's doing the opposite. And the fact that I have it keeps other mental consciousnesses within, it's strong enough so that it keeps other mental consciousnesses in my continuum from seeing the truth too. And so because it obstructs or veils, it's called a concealer. Now we see why, you know, a bunch of us are using the word concealer, the veil. A sutra also says, and this is his source, things are produced samvartitas. And the translator has chosen to call this conventionally, whereas he's just been talking about ignorance, a consciousness, a concealer. So you would think things are produced for a concealing consciousness. Things are produced in a concealing way. Samvartitas, correct me if I'm wrong, is a frozen ablative used as an adverb. That's gunzo tu is the tenyi, the adverbial accusative in Tibetan, tenyi kita. It's called tenyi. Just that, because being an adverb, it modifies the verb. It goes just with the verb, you see? It's fused just with the thing that it modifies. So we have to notice that here, Kamalashila clearly, when he says is called samvrti, he's talking about something that obstructs and veils. And you would think that when he says things are produced samvrtitas, that he must mean things are produced within a context of obstruction, veiling, concealing. Ultimately, they are without inherent existence. He uses the word ultimately. He qualifies his refutation of inherent existence with ultimately. Does that suggest that conventionally things have inherent existence? Or does it suggest that ultimately means in the face of an ultimate reasoning consciousness, okay, things are without inherent existence, whereas in the face of ignorance, the obstructor, things have inherent existence? You could read the line in many ways. That which is mistaken about the lack of inherent existence is asserted to be the concealer of reality. Now, the concealer of reality is, in Tibetan, Yanda Gunzo. Now, there's a famous division of Gunzo into Yanda Gunzo and Lope Gunzo. And this means real conventionalities and unreal conventionalities. Unreal conventionalities are mirror images, you know, because they appear to be one thing and aren't it. They aren't what they appear to be. Whereas Yanda Gunzo are real conventionalities. They're able to perform the function that they seem to be able to do, that they appear to be able to do. If you apply it with respect to consciousnesses, the consciousness that perceives a mirror image is a Lope Gunzo. which is hard to say unreal, perhaps, but you can see the flavor of the word, maybe incorrect. And Yanda Kunzo would be correct. But in this case, Yanda is taken as meaning reality, and Kunzo is obstructor, veiler, concealer of reality. And I think here, since just above, he's been talking about veiling suchness, obstructing suchness. Emptiness is suchness because whether it's realized or not, it will always be such. It always was, is, and will be such. From the context of what precedes it, that which is mistaken about the lack of inherent existence is asserted as the veiler, concealer, obstructor of reality. That reading appears to be correct. The translator's choice in the first line just makes you wonder. You know, maybe Kamalashila's view is that the production of things is totally within the context of ignorance. And that in fact, it doesn't exist at all. You know, it's mind-blowing.
So then ultimately would be the unconcealed?
Yes. Well, the ultimate, yes,
Ultimate.
is a consciousness that does not conceal, and not only does not, but reveals reality. Once he says things are produced samvrtitas, and he's just said that ignorance, this mistaken awareness, is called samvrti. So the very first thing out of his quote is, things are produced samvrtitas. And the translator, me, has chosen to say things are produced conventionally. But, and, you know, I'm honest, so I put in what it's translating. Because the quote we're getting the run that we're getting on this is Tsongkhapa's run. But also, it's mind-boggling to wonder how it could be Kamalashila's run, that things are produced only for ignorance. They really aren't produced at all. You know, that it's so nihilistic. I'm just bringing up problems. Since, and then these incredible things are added into the translation. What's added in comes from Gelugpa commentary, specifically from the Khalkha Mongolian Benden Choje, who was born
1797.
But anyway, since something arises from that, and you can see mistaken awareness that is the concealer of reality, okay? All false things which switch it, whatever this awareness is, sees displayed by that, and this next part makes, all of the others make sense, I think, are sees displayed by that conception of true existence as if they are truly established, okay, are called Kunzopzam. Samvrti matra, I guess. Just samvrti. Just concealers? The things are concealers? You know, but the awareness, you see? So, some awareness, mistaken awareness, is displaying these things as if they truly exist. Therefore, the things get the name of the awareness. These things are all ignorance. Like saying that? So then, maybe Gunzogzam even doesn't have to be translated as mere conventionalities. They're called mere ignorance. They're called mere veilings. You with me? Mere veilings. Mere obstructings. Mere concealings. Mere eliminates here that they're truly established. Mere has always something that it's eliminating. And here it's eliminating that they're truly established. Moreover, that, you see, mistaken awareness that veils, that awareness that veils reality arises through the maturation of beginningless predispositions for error, okay? Whereby all living beings see phenomena displayed as if with a nature in reality, as if they had an inherently established nature in reality. There doesn't seem to be anything difficult with what was added in there, right? Displayed. They see phenomena that way. Therefore, all entities of false things, through the power of, now it said all living beings, those clearly means those living beings, through the power of those living beings' thoughts. All entities of false things, all entities of things false, due to the power, I see I'm trying not to add in too much. All entities of things false due to the power of those living beings' thoughts are said only to exist samvertitas. For only to exist for ignorance. Now, I think it's clear in the general run of Kamalashila's writing that to exist conventionally doesn't mean to exist only for ignorance. But it's incredibly unexplained. You know, it's just, you know, I mean, given the magnitude of what is being discussed, it is incredibly obtuse. And I'm saying it's genius that comes in and even twists it into meaning anything. I think the definition of genius is to state the obvious. To even, you know, to see the obvious, to see the contrast, and to state it. Genius often can just sees some very clear. So then we get Tsongkhapa's run on it. The mistaken awareness that superimposes on things which in reality are without their own entityness, an aspect opposite to that, refers to a consciousness that mistakes what does not ultimately exist inherently to exist ultimately. Then the quoting from the text is called a concealer. Why is that in the text? Why is this thing called a concealer? It is called a, I know we should have added in it, why not? Because it obstructs itself from perception of such. So you see, adding in words, well, actually, he doesn't add it in. Because it is the meaning of the concealer of reality in the citation from the descent into Lanka. Do you follow? When Kamalashila says is called a concealer because it obstructs from suchness or because it veils from perception of suchness. What Kamalashila is doing is commenting on the sutra, where it says, is asserted as the concealer of reality. Okay? He's commenting on, Tsongpa's pointing out that he's commenting on that. And I think he's seen, after all, Kamalashila cited it, and he's giving commentary on it before it appears. There's Ngadel and Chidel. Ngadel is commentary prior to the citation. Chidel is commentary subsequent to the citation. And you sometimes get both, sometimes get one or the other, right? You can, I suppose it shouldn't be amusing, but I wouldn't know what Ngadel and Chidel meant unless some Tibetan had told me. But to see a scholar who doesn't know what it means and is translate this, an ancient commentary and a more modern commentary. Yes?
Isn't the Lokomatara Sutra considered a Chittamatra Sutra?
Oh, no. Chittamatra by the Chittamatrans, Madhyamaka by the Madhyamakas. Good point. Samvrti, you see, is taken as obstructor. Dripje, concealing reality. And it's clear, he's right. Since, now Tsongpa himself doesn't even put in this junk that the translators put in from Benden Chöje, since it arises from that, well, God, you see, they had to come up with something that could arise from, maybe we could come up with something else that arises. Do you follow? Since it arises from that. From that means from this mistaken awareness that veils reality. So what would it mean? If we look around, I don't like this commentary, this particular one, but it's the only one I ever found. That which sees the display by the conception of true existence. So you see, it can't be, he was looking for something else that wasn't the innate conception of true existence in itself, but was some like artificial conception of true existence, because it has to arise from the innate one. He's struggling very hard though. Anyway, that which sees the display by the conception of true existence, as if objects are truly established, is a conceptual consciousness, not a sense consciousness. For Gyanagarbha's commentary, blah, 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 explains that the object of negation does not appear to sense consciousnesses. And it is the same here in the Yogacara Swatantrika Madhyamaka school of Shantarakshita and his student Kamalashila. In the mind-only school, what is the object of negation in the view of selflessness, emptiness?
Objects are established by way of their own characters, reference to central consciousness.
Yes, their objects are established by way of their own character as the reference of terms or the reference of conceptual consciousnesses. Also
that phenomena are a different entity, objective phenomena are a different entity from the subjects that perceive.
and that subjects are a different entity from the objects. And so these are the two objects of negation of the subtle selflessness in Chittamatra. Chart. The second one is called Sumzin Sehadedu Shubha. It's the object of negation. And for when there's a permanent phenomenon involved, like uncompounded space, they say null kade. But you can't speak of say within Gilukina with regard to permanent phenomena. Sum means Sunja. Zin means Zimbabwe or Zinche. The apprehender, so the apprehended object and the apprehender. Does this appear to sense consciousnesses?
Does what appear in sense?
Sunzin Zethade the Trube. Does this, is there do things appear this way to sense consciousnesses? Or is it just to a mental consciousness that adds the sign?
Things appear to be different entities, right? I think that does appear sense.
Yes, because we can confirm it even in our perception. It's said to be undeniable that things appear to be a different entity. The chair appears to be a different entity from the eye consciousness. And then what's constituted by Sungzin Zeitade du Zimba, the conception that Sungwa and Zimba are different substantial entities, is just the assent to that appearance. The assent to the appearance. That's the fundamental error, assenting to that appearance. And the other way of getting at the object of negation, which is just as subtle, is Ranzin Dokpe Shenshir Rangitsini Kitruba. So you can just add nawa onto it to get the appearance. Sungzin Zeitade do Trubar nawa. To get the conception, Sungzin Zeitade do Trubar Zimba. Okay? Trubar nawa and Trubar Zimba. And the fact of it is Sungzin Zeitade do Trubar. So Sungzin Zeitade do Truba, in mind only doesn't exist. But Sungzin Zeitade do Truba Nawa does exist, such an appearance. Sungzin Zeitade do Truba Zimba, the conception of it, the apprehension of it, does exist. Established by way of its own character as, I say, referent, shenshir, of a conceptual consciousness apprehending it. For instance, we think jacket. Does this appear to be established by way of its own character as the referent of some term? It doesn't mean a jacket. Just, you know, we're talking about, it's not quite like the pointability in Prasangika, right? That it's like, well, established by way of its own character. It's referent of the thought, Tokpa, Ranzin Tokpa means, some, you know, I think about my jacket. Gotta get my jacket cleaned, right? So you think about my jacket, that's like some entity. And gotta get it cleaned is some quality of it, right? And the jacket is, you know, it's a nameable entity, or by way of its own character. Not that it's got to be called Jack or anything else. Okay, that's the fundamental error. And assenting. So does this appear to sense consciousnesses in Chittamatra? Yes. Just the raw appearance itself makes it look as if that's totally appropriate from its own side. So, thinking about it, Ranzin Dokpa, or another way of saying it, same thing, but with regard to just terms, the term jacket. See, terms and conceptual consciousnesses work the same way, but it's just Rang Shejube, Je, Jupe, Jukshir, Rangitsini Kitruba. established by way of its own character as the referent of the term that expresses it, that verbalizes it. Okay, same question. Now, these objects of negation in the subtle selflessness in the mind-only school are held to appear to the senses, and I think it's undeniable that they do. And you can sort of see the connection between Songzin Zetade and Ran Shijiride to Bejukshir Rangitsen Yikitruba. The connection between difference of entity of the object and the consciousness perceiving it, and by way of its own character being the referent of a term, because the term you see comes from the subject side. It's like in order to objectify some heated object, we put bad words on it, distance gained through words. So you can see the connection between the two. So then in the consequence school, what is the object of negation? Ranjingitruba, inherent existence, inherent establishment. Does that appear to sense consciousnesses, or is it just something that appears to the mental consciousness?
That appears to sense consciousnesses.
Appears to sense consciousnesses. Yes. It's a fundamental assertion. See, this is one of those fundamental ideas in notions in Gelug that quite contrasts with how a lot of writers talk about Rasamguru. As if it's just things that are made up by words, within the scope of the mental consciousness. And if you left your sense consciousnesses as they are, everything would be all right. Sort of like how some people take the practice of Zen archery. You can just stop the mental consciousness. Everything will be okay. So there's a fundamental misappearance to even the sense consciousnesses, and therefore Ranshingi Trubar Zimba, the conception that things exist or established inherently or from their own side, is just the assent to that appearance. Just as in mind only, there's an assent to this, and you can almost see the similarity between the two objects of negation. The assent to this appearance of a difference of entity of subject and object. Now, of course, when you think about something long enough, it begins displaying what you see that way. You train in Nazi view, and you say, oh, there goes one of those queers, right? Whatever. And the world, you see that the word display is used here? The world gets displayed this way. So what appears to the sense consciousness in raw sensation, and what is being overlain from the mental consciousness, frankly, that's really hard to figure out.
If this kind of establishment appears to sense consciousnesses, how come there's all this discussion of if a Buddha doesn't have these wrong conceptions, how does he recognize conventionalities? And
it's because the obstructions to omniscience are this false appearance itself. And a Buddha has overcome the false appearance too.
so, okay,
Has overcome the false appearance too.
it doesn't even appear to.
Things don't even
Sense
appear to
consciousness.
inherently exist
Okay.
to a Buddha's sense consciousness. Sense consciousnesses themselves are totally pure. So that's the difference between a foe destroyer, an arhat, and a Buddha. And Buddha has further overcome even the appearance of inherent existence, which allows a Buddha to be omniscient. It's that appearance which prevents omniscience. Now, what's at issue in Swatantrika? What is the object of negation in Swatantrika? Lo nimela nawe wangi shakwa mayimba. Wangi tumu mayi. Teolupi. Wene tuva. Lo nimela nawe wangi shakwa mayimba. Right? Wangi tumu mayimbe. Teolupi wene tuva. I see you got to learn these fundamental things. You don't learn the fundamental things, okay? There's nowhere to go. Does that appear to sense consciousness? In Chittamatra, the object of negation and selflessness appears to sense consciousness. In Prasangika, the object of negation appears to sense consciousness. In Swatantrika, now, what's being said here is that Gyanagarbha's commentary on his own distinguishing the two truths says that the object of negation does not appear to sense consciousnesses. Now, what exactly did he say? He said something like, we don't refute what appears to cowherds. He didn't say the object of negation doesn't appear to sense consciousness. You see, cowherd is somebody who hasn't trained in systems of tenets, you know, for the most part, but there'll be the exceptional one, Krishna. To say the least will be Krishna, right? But anyway, and this is back in the old days where they probably weren't involved in politics either. And so if you say we don't refute what appears to them, it must mean to their sense consciousnesses, you know, I mean, it's a very vague statement. It's so thin, you know, it's not even a house of cards. It's a house of silken strands. Based on what Tsongkhapa says here, almost all Gelugpa scholars say, in the Yogacara Swatantrika, in the Swatantrika Madhyamaka school, this Karisa, what's the object of negation? Lo Nimela, Nawe Wangi. Rangi Tumayambe, Tulupimune Truva, does not appear to sense consciousnesses. And you would think that, you know, having read quite a bit of Jayan Sheva, that I would remember the details of his assertion, but frankly I don't, which actually is a little bit better than what my teacher, my main teacher of this remembered. I only remember that he says, no, it does appear. And I don't remember his argument. It's somebody else who says, if in Chittamatra the object of negation can appear to the sense, if even they can have the object of negation appear to sense consciousness, what's wrong with the Swatantrika object of negation that it can't appear to a sense consciousness? I think it's Stendhal Hornbull, another Mongolian. Why I say what I know, I'm just joking, but it's a little bit better than what my teacher said, is that my teacher remembered it the other way around, that Jayan Sheva said that it doesn't appear. And when we got to that section of the text, it was sort of like he read it very slowly. It's quite understandable because the topics get so complicated that when you're a few years away from it, you forget what your own cherished author has said on the topic. You know, you even take the opposite opinion. So anyway, now, if we look back at the top of the page, remember the last sentence of the quote from Kamalashila? Therefore, all entities of false things, through the power of those living beings, thoughts. You see non-defective crept in there? Yeah, it's not in Kamalashila. You see, and it's nowhere else. You see, what we're memorizing as the object of negation in Svatantrika doesn't appear in any Svatantrika text. Through the power of those sentient beings' non-defective thoughts, which then gets done, that is to say, conceptual and non-conceptual consciousnesses unaffected by the conception of true existence. My. Both conceptual and non-conceptual is in the word samba. I mean, normally you wouldn't even think that samba could include conceptual. Isn't it amazing what they have read into this? It's not the translators, even though that's Anne and myself. I said only to exist conventionally. So let's move on. Moreover, that conception, that mistaken awareness that veils reality, arises through maturation of business cause vera, indicates that this conception of true existence is innate. Okay? Is innate. Because it's beginningless predispositions for error. Therefore, Kamalashila speaks of all living beings. He's really drawing out the meaning very nicely in that paragraph. The meaning that you have to admit is there. I have to admit. The thoughts, now I get, the samba of those living beings are not just conceptual consciousnesses, but also refer to non-conceptual consciousness. Well, now you begin to, it gets fishy. I mean, for some reason in your system, you've devised it to be this way, this lo nume. Did you see, it's not samba nume, lo nume, right? You want it to be non-conceptual too. Now, the Tibetan here, in the notes to note 2, to this section on the Svatantrika school, is my translation of 72, line 4. Almost to the end, it says Umanawa. And this, what I translate on note 2, begins on 72, line 8 in the middle. Chönam, Chöndaba, Ranshi Meba, Yoba, Trotape, Denzin Hange Chojen, Yanda de, Neluki, Ranshin Tawala, Kunzobam, Dje Chejade, that whole thing. Okay? I want to switch over and begin reading The Two Truths, Guy Newland's thesis. But since we have begun to read about the substance of persons, I'm thinking that the assignment, therefore, is Emptiness Yoga, 263 to 281. And then Newland, pages 1 to 50.